Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Dark Matter, as well as the latest episode of Wynonna Earp. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include the time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Dark Matter, you can skip to what I say about this week's episode of Wynonna Earp. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Dark Matter. A very, very good episode where we had the return of the alternate reality Raza crew, because it turns out that the person that came with them back in season 2 was most of the crew. The only one that didn't come back was Jace, because he's kind of the, loner type, kind of prefers to work on his own. But we have Wexler, Tosh, Portia, Marcus, and the android all coming. And I wasn't expecting. I was like, oh, it's gonna be one person. I figured it had to be probably like Jace or something, but it's like, no, it's the entire crew. Wasn't expecting it. So basically, the entire time they've been kind of running around doing their own thing. Because I love that thing in the beginning. I was like, oh man, oh wow, the crew is coming after Rio hard. I was like, oh yeah, this is some plan to get close to him and everything. Oh, you're helping people out. But what should have been a key sign, and I kind of thought it was weird, I was like, you're killing these guys. I was like, yeah, I get it, they're enemies and stuff like that, but you're really not like that, the whole, not killing everything. But then the moment they betrayed him, I'm like, and it was like, why would you? It's like, oh my god, alternate reality them. It's like, it made so much sense. So basically, they've kind of been. I also love the conversation that Five has with them when the Raza crew finds out about the other them's kind of causing trouble. They're like, Five's like, we gotta stop them. They're kind of ruining your name. And you have Three being like, our names are kind of already through the mud, so who cares? We're kind of labeled as like the super bad guys. So why kind of worry about them ruining our reputation even more? I mean, granted, it caused some conflict with Truffaut to a certain extent because she, made dealings with them. It ended up giving them missiles that kind of sneak across, but basically it didn't work. They kind of just stole them from themselves to kind of sell and make a profit for. But so we still have. I'm very interested to see what the ramifications are for that, because the fact of the matter is they kind of started some stuff from Rio because they stole a ship from Rio. So now he's kind of on even worse terms with the Raza crew. But I'm definitely very interested to see, because that was never cleared up, because I don't know if they know that the Raza crew, the other reality Raza crew, got in contact with Rio. I don't think they really care anyway. It's like, we have our issues with Rio anyway, so Rio wants to come after us, he can come after us. He already sent assassins after us anyway. I mean, mainly that was to get the Blink Drop, but it was to take care of them too. But now it seems like this one, because Rio's side of things was kind of interesting too, because obviously we've seen the backlash of doing what he did, because a lady was speaking up. It's like, no, we're loyal to Ashido. These are basically everyone that was associated, who's part of the same clan as the guy who attempted to kill Rio last episode. And, Teku was like, do not lead by fear. If you show these people you love them, they will love you in return. You want their love, not their fear. The whole age-old question, is it better to be loved or to be feared? And some people are like, why choose? And I think Rio's kind of in that position of why choose? If I leave by fear and show them my strength, they'll follow in line by fear, and eventually they will love me. Whether they, it's one of those situations. So it's like, as we can already tell from that little bit at the beginning, it seems like that's already falling apart, because he was like, no, why would I serve, believe in a leader who would do this? Because at first they're like, no, Emperor Ishida wouldn't do this. It's like, no, we're doing this under his orders. It's like, well, why did I serve an emperor who would, cast aside my freedom like this? Because he's so in need of a victory, because they're in the losing, and he just wants to make a, like I said, it seems like he's letting, like I said, the war and who he is, Rio versus 4, and it seems like he's kind of on the losing end sometimes. It seems like I brought this up last episode. It seems like it's because of the conflict, because he's not fully real, and because he's not fully Rio. I said Rio. Because he's not fully Rio, and because he's not fully 4, he's not fully committed to everything. There's always that other side of him that second guesses it. Because Teku's like, yo, you don't want to do this. Like, especially when he brings it up, it's like, I don't think any of them actually have any connection. But he's like, get me someone that can prove that they have, obviously your people aren't getting the job done. Get someone who can get the job done. And you see it kind of affecting him, because I think there's a part of him that knows, he isn't going about this the right way. But he's kind of, it's one of those situations where it's like, you're already going so far down that path, there's no going back now. So maybe that's how he feels about it. And even going as far as being like, yeah, he respects Teku's advice with this whole situation because he's getting so caught up in it. He's like, I'm going to go after my crew. It's like they stole the blank drive from me. They blew up one of my facilities. Now they've stolen one of my ships. Granted, that wasn't them. The alternate reality did. But even then, semantics, it doesn't change the fact that they've caused some trouble for Rio in the past anyway. So, but I mean, it's things stacked upon themselves, you know? It's problems stacked upon problems. So, like, I'm very interested. Like I said, they're setting it up to be like, because he's so willing to show, like I said, rule with an iron fist, that will ultimately be his downfall. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Maybe it end up being that Teku is kind of like, I still think that he wasn't the guy that tried to assassinate Ishida was on his own. Like, I think, like, Masaki might have done that to kind of prove a point. Because it seems like, you know, Masaki does whatever she believes is best. I said that before, but I'm kind of reiterating it here. So, but we'll just kind of have to see about that. Like I said, I still get the feeling like it's going to be like she frames Teku for it just because they butt heads. I mean, we haven't really seen them butt heads, but they have, even to this extent. Because from the very beginning, it was like, yeah, they obviously aren't going to like each other because they have different approaches on how, like, Rio should lead. But that's his own thing. Another thing with this whole, like, other Raza crew thing I appreciate was Adrian's story, because Adrian's like, well, yeah, you know, since we came on the ship and everything, and you have Solara being like, we. It's like, yeah, we causing all this trouble. Once again, we. Most of it being you, everything that's happened is pretty much your fault. It's like, oh, all this trouble we've caused and basically everything that's happened to them so far this season. It's like, maybe we should leave. It's like, he's like, yeah, but, you know, maybe, kind of ease him into it. It's like, trust me, the crew will be fine with you leaving. He's like, but the moment Five's like, oh, we need you. And he's like, maybe it can wait. It's a whole, like I said, it's like, I love Adrian for the fact of the matter is, you know, and it's something Five kind of comments on later on. It's like, he has a good heart. He wants to try, like, he tries too hard to, you know, sometimes, but, you know, it's with the best of intentions. And I appreciate the fact is that he's lying to the other Portia and Marcus, and it's just like, man, you're so good at lying. He faked it so good, and he's like, yeah, I just wasn't sure if they know me, because it's like, you know, I started thinking about, you know, what was the other reality me like, you know, what you don't mind. It's like, oh, you know, I'm sure he'd be a concert pianist or something. It's like, no, trust me, my mom said I had talent for it, and they're just kind of like, yeah, sure. I appreciate the back and forth of like, you got caught the whole, like, what's her situation of, like, Adrian's like, no, I saw you going for your gun. It's like, no, I'd be going for my gun. This is what it looks like if I'm going for my gun. It's like, oh, there's people in the trees. And then, like, Solara kind of knocks him out. And he's like, get him, guys. You can get him now. He's like, well, shit. At first I was kind of like, are you playing into the fact is that you're that good at bluffing? It's like, oh no, they just left you to hung you out to dry. So never mind. It also brought out that kind of interesting thing of a conversation to show you the difference between Portia and 2. It's the fact is that 2 is like, yeah. He's like, yeah, I tried to look up the version of, like, Wax was like, I tried to look up the me in this reality. What happened to him? It's like, yeah, I killed him. It's like, how? I spaced him. Well, that's code. It's like, well, I wouldn't have done it if he hadn't tried to space me. If he didn't, you know, space me. Which I begs the question, do Adrian and Solara know about the whole, like, what 2 is? I don't know if that conversation's come up yet about her nanites and stuff like that. Maybe it has. I mean, how, like, did Tabor know about 2's whole situation or not? Like, is that something she kept only between her and the crew? You know, or, like, how many people outside of them actually know? I mean, because, like, that never was like, whoa, you got space? Like, so either they know, like, it hasn't come up yet, has it? I don't remember if Adrian said anything the first time they met. Maybe he did. I'm pretty sure he did, but it's like, I just thought that was kind of interesting. It was just kind of something that was kind of floating in the back of my head. But like I said, the back and forth of like, switching out both Marcuses and our Marcus, you know, this reality's Marcus, having that conversation with Tosh about their quote unquote encounter and everything. Also the whole situation with Marcus shooting the android. It's kind of interesting to me. Like, I was like, like the moment things were set up, the moment she set Marcus free, I'm like, so this is, and it turns out to be that future event that she saw. So it's kind of interesting. It makes you kind of wonder, like, did everything she see, at least a lot of that, it seems like that might actually be this season. Maybe not. I don't know. But just like the fact is that's another thing that's kind of hitting, like I said, I get the feeling like they're kind of setting up the whole, like, Ishida family, the Ishida fall. It seems like that's going to be like the biggest thing, at the very least this season. So I'm getting the feeling maybe that'll be something that, like, it's like the tail end of the season, like that's the season finale, or maybe that's like we kind of eventually get there in the middle of the season, or the very least later parts. I don't know. But it's just kind of interesting that immediately hit that. So that kind of made me think, like, are we going to hit every moment except for like that last moment of her time traveling, because that last thing was like super far into the future. I mean, who knows like how much they're going to skip around some stuff like that. I don't think they're going to do that because they haven't really done that so far, but I mean, we're just going to have to wait and see. I also appreciate it, like, when Portia came on board, she tried to use the code and everything, and Android was like, yeah, sorry, that's not going to work. I'm wondering, was that counter, like, I mean, because obviously they set a lot of stuff in motion, because it's like, oh, Boone, like, Marcus shot the android, and then, like, trying to set Portia free, and then, but, 5 is still, like, a key component. And then, like, not, like, kind of disorientates him, and then knocks him out. So it's like, yeah, we were expecting you to. Because the thing they keep forgetting is, like, in the alternate reality, there wasn't a them. Like, there wasn't a 5 there. Because 5 is just a kid or whatever, but the fact of the matter is it doesn't change how much of a badass that she is, that she has become a part of this crew and, adds her own weight to everything too. So she's able to help out. So it's like, yeah, we saw you coming, because you're kind of forgetting there's another element to this crew besides what's of you, the alternate reality versions of yourself. So, but I was wondering, was that like whole android situation, like her like being able to, like, I was like, oh yeah, that code you're trying to put in, it doesn't work. Is that like from like them already planning ahead that, oh, they're going to try and shut you down, so shut down any routines that might do that? Or is that from the fact is that Rio did that to her back in season 2's finale, so in preparation for that, to make sure it doesn't happen again, it's like, yo, get rid of that routine that shuts you down like that, so no one can do that, because the crew's probably like, we don't need that on you anyway. I mean, just on the off chance you kind of go a little wild and everything, sure, but nevertheless. So I'm kind of glad that situation kind of played out the way it did positively. Granted, Wexler did say something like, oh, this is far from over, which I highly agree. I did like the interaction between the androids. Well, I mean, first of all, the alternate reality android helping out, because Tasha's like, oh, well, I guess we'll attack the ship. Our people or the blink drive? Oh, well, I guess that's that. And basically a reflection of Jace in the other reality kind of doing whatever needed to be done. It's like, I don't care. I'm a sociopath, so I'm going to blow up the planet. I'm curious, did the android do that out of retaliation because she wanted to specifically protect Portia? Because like early in the episode, she was kind of like, oh, Portia, we haven't heard anything from Portia yet. So it's like, obviously we know that there's something between Portia and the android. Obviously Portia with her memories knows a lot more about it, like, because it's like, oh, Portia's the one that made the android the way she is, but why? Is it because Portia was lonely and wanted someone else that wasn't 100% human, someone that was artificial, that, it's like, oh, I give you something that was never given for me, a choice. I'm allow you to be more than what you are. You're not just an android, you become something more. So it's like, I mean, once again, it's kind of like, why would Portia do that? Is it because of the way that the android uses it now as kind of a tactical advantage of like, oh, being able to feign humanity? Is that what that's supposed to be? Well, it's not even feigning humanity at this point in time, because the android has become a lot more human. So is it because of that, or what? Because like Portia is not the sentimental type, has never seemed to be the sentimental type, but nevertheless. So was it specifically for Portia's sake, which I'm kind of leaning more towards, or was it just like programming to like, oh, I got to protect the crew of the ship, and it's like, yeah, you guys are part of the ship, but the original crew is Portia and Boone's. Maybe not. We'll just, I don't know if we'll let you get an answer to that. It was kind of interesting interaction between the androids, is what I was kind of bringing up earlier. The android's like, yeah, tell your crew not to come after the blink drive anymore. It's kind of broken beyond repair. So I don't know if that's ever going to get repaired or not. Maybe not. We're just going to have to wait and see. Which also means there's no going back for the other Raza crew. So that's definitely going to be a problem. And then there's the other android being like, oh yeah, I'll tell my crew to back down. It's like, are you being deceptive? She's like, no. So obviously, possibly, at the very least, we know our android, this reality's android, best way to describe her. I love how I keep doing that. But she's being honest. Whether the other android is or not, I don't know. It seems like she's very similar to our android, or just like her way of handling and approaching things. So she definitely cares about the crew. So it doesn't seem like it might just be a programming thing. It just seems like she legitimately cares for them. So it does seem like obviously the alternate reality Raza's crew is going to be up to some troubles, because they end up visiting Commander Neiman of Ferris Corp. So it's like, oh yeah, we have a common enemy and stuff like that. So it's my mindset's immediately like, well, this is obviously things didn't work out with Mike, so they're kind of playing the other side of the war and everything because they have an advantage because the timelines are out of sync for both parallel universes. They know what's in store for the future, so they can help out. Like, oh yeah, this and this are going to happen. How do you know? I just do. I'm not the porcelain, but I'm kind of the porcelain, It's a whole thing. So it's either going specifically like helping them out because obviously going to end up betraying them because the Raza crew has no allegiances to anyone. It's like we sell to the highest bidder. So maybe that, but combined with also the fact is, we're going to also take out the Raza crew while we're at it. But it seems like they're going to leave the Raza crew alone for now. So once again, I mean, maybe it's just kind of like icing on the cake, taking them out. Or maybe their target's going to be Rio because it's like, kind of screw over this reality's Raza crew with just having to deal with the ramifications of that, because any stuff that Rio kind of aims towards them, the Raza crew is going to be at them and not the alternate reality versions of them because he doesn't know that they exist in this world. So I was just sitting here wondering how were they able to tell that whole Adrian situation was a lie, but then I was like, oh yeah, they kind of did the exact same thing with Rio when they originally went to the alternate reality, so it's kind of like, okay, that kind of makes sense. But sadly, in this episode, we do see that Adrian and Solara lead the ship. It's like, because it's like, yeah, this isn't my rodeo. I'm more of a behind the scenes. It's like, oh man, just loving you and Solara being a part of this and everything. And even at one point you have the android being like, oh, we'd love to have you as part of the team, Solara. You'd be a great asset and everything. But she's like, nah, Adrian wouldn't survive without me. And you almost see a sad look on Android's face because the ship is getting smaller and smaller. And I think for her, it's like, this has become like a family to her, just like it has to everyone else. Specifically, it's become like that's something her and Five easily, this has become their family, and it's like their family's getting smaller and smaller. Four's going through his own situation. One's gone, and now Six recently left, so now it's just 5, 2, 3, and the android. It's like where they were originally a group of 7, the android included, and now they're down to 4. It's kind of sad, and it breaks my heart because I'm like, plus losing Nyx too, man. It's just, can't let that tragedy slip your mind. So it just, you see the look on her face almost like disappointed because it's like, like the ship's just getting smaller and quieter, and maybe that's something we'll see kind of go for, especially with the thing at the end where it's like, oh wait, we haven't been able to get in contact with 6. Oh wait, zoom in, there's bodies all over the place. So, like I brought up last episode, either 6 is the person they were talking about. It's like, wasn't like Agent Zero or something like that. Either some secret programming activated to do that, or basically some like top class assassin to because they needed to kind of shape shit in line, because it's like, all these colonies trying to be independent and stuff like that. Bump that. Screw that. They want to try and get independence from us. Since you don't want to be useful, since you're not going to submit, we'll just wipe you out. So either 6 is this particular person, or 6 is on the run from them, this particular person, after everyone else died. Because, I feel like 6 wouldn't run, though. So, not unless they were trying to give 6 the opportunity. Because easily 6 could have been a target because they found out that 6 was the leader of the new independence. But then I'm like, how would you find that out so quickly? Then again, it's a large-scale corporation. They have their information, I guess. But, maybe, hopefully it's not the case of, like, 6 kind of went bad in a sense, almost like bad programming or something like that. Hopefully not. We just kind of wait and see about that. And speaking of programming, we did see a little bit more bonding between Sarah and Boone. 3. I keep doing that. I don't even call him by his first name. I just call him by his last name. But 3 was just kind of like cause and effect in the matter is that she's upgraded programming, and now she's able to kind of create more stuff in there. She's created plants and stuff, and she's like, yeah, I wanted to make this a place for like kind of being almost like a home for you and me. And you see this look on 3's face. It's a sense of like, yes, she's trying her best, but the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, she is just a program, that none of this is real. And I think that reality, like, it's a difficult situation, and it's like, it's a situation of like, eventually I think 3's going to get to the point that maybe he feels like, I have to let you go. You're not Sarah anymore. Like, yes, you're her memories and everything, but I let you go before I recuperated, and now I'm kind of falling down that hole again. I don't know. Like, I get the feeling like there's going to be a deadly term with this whole like I said, programming situation. Whether or not, I think I brought it up before of like how being like, oh, maybe she'll go a little crazy programming and stuff like that. That's the thing with programs; they can be hacked and modified and messed with or corrupted over time, and maybe her human emotions will corrupt her programming in case things don't go the way. Because maybe it's going to get to the point where she's like, she wants Marcus to spend less and less time in the real world and more time with her. It's like maybe she even tried to be like, yo, why don't you be here with me permanently? All you have to do is give up your human body. Very similar to that whole situation where everyone was hallucinating on a ship and he saw Sarah and she was telling him to kill himself. Almost kind of a similar thing to that. Might be kind of like almost like homage or callback to that exact thing in a sense of like if the story kind of unfolded in that sense. I don't know. Like I said, that's just kind of a story on its own, but that's kind of the vibe I'm getting there. Just the look on his face of just when they're embracing each other, almost like he's worried about it because it's like, yeah, but this place would never be home because I'm alive and you're not. You're just this programming. Yes, you're still the Sarah that I care about, but the fact of the matter is you're not. You know, that the reservations he already had before too. So I don't know, like overall, a very good episode, and I'm very interested to see like, you know, where next week's episode takes us. I mean, at the very least the next episode. You know, I always do that as a disclaimer of whether or not there is an episode next week or not, you know, so. And now moving on to this week's episode of Wynonna Earp, a very good episode where we find out a little bit more about the thing that was in Waverly that is now in Wynonna. It's called, was it a Minchkin? Apparently this is something that Lucado and Dolls have come across before. Specifically Dolls in the sense of like within the confines of the show, it's actually the thing that possessed him last season during that whole like, wasn't it like the whole Blade episode about like trying to draw out that revenant who lived through reflections and stuff like that. And I think specifically that dude, like that storyline, like that's the episode he got possessed, and the thing that possessed him was this thing. Basically, it possesses you and then it multiplies, being able to infect a lot of people. That's like the deadliest thing about this thing. Which you have that group who's known as the Order who deals with them. The leader of them, his name is Ewing, I think. Like, I feel like I know that actor. I've seen him in stuff. I just can't quite place him. The thing is, I think in my head, and I'm sure it'd probably be an insult to him. Now I'm sitting here thinking about it. Is that the actor who played Boof's brother in on Bones? Is that the actor who plays his brother now I'm thinking about it? Because the thing is, like, for some reason in my head, he reminds me of Justin Hartley. They kind of look a little similar in the face a little bit to me. That's what I was going to mention earlier. I'm sure that's pretty insulting and stuff like that. It's like, oh, you look like same. It's like, I'm sure actors get tired of like, oh, stop comparing me to this person and this person. I'm sure a lot of people get tired of stuff like that. But nonetheless, that's just immediately where my brain goes anytime I see them. Once again, nonetheless, they basically exist to like, oh, we protect the Ghost Triangle. It's like, and even Wynonna's kind of like, okay, you protect it, so where the hell have you been the entire time I've been dealing with this Revenant situation? I guess it's like, the Revenant thing is just kind of an Earp situation. It's like, yeah, that's your own burden to bear. We protect the Triangle, you know, the Sanctuary and stuff like that, so the moment Willa opened the door and stuff like that, that's when it kind of kicked into overdrive. This particular thing, it's deadly because it constantly multiplies. It doesn't just infect one person. I actually felt so bad for Lucado this episode, especially, I mean, for one, it's like realizing how much of a badass she was. Like, we never really got to see like Lucado kind of go at it, but like her and Dolls fighting, it's like, yo, she can handle her own. She ain't like Black Badge for nothing. She got some fighting skills, but for her story to kind of play out the way it did, it just kind of fed on her like kind of hopelessness, because it's like, man, I don't have no place to go. Like, I don't have, like, you know, we kind of found out about her husband, and obviously that's the reason why she hates Dolls and everything. But she doesn't have that. She doesn't have Black Bat. She kind of has nothing. So that's why the thing was able to kind of get to her. And she fought it off to a certain extent, but fighting it off, she didn't have a strong enough resistance to it, and was not expecting her head to explode like that. I was like, oh, you'll probably be able to save her or something like that, or she caused some trouble or something, but was not expecting her head to literally explode. Like, I was like, wow. I thought she was going to be around a while. I was like, apparently not. I guess that's, and I guess in Black Badge's case, it's like, oh, that's one less headache to worry about. Though later on we find out that Black Badge is going missing, so obviously it's got to be associated with those things that are around town, the ones that kind of put on Mercedes and her sister put on their faces, because those are the things that kind of escape. So either they killed all the Black Badge agents, or the Black Badge agents are on the run because they're like, yo, these are some powerful ass things. We got to get away. Like, which is like, you would think, I don't know, they're a top class organization. That's why they were never returning Lucato's calls, because whatever the case may be, because Jeremy went to see them and it's like, yeah, they're gone. I don't know where. And it's like, well, what? I mean, that's the thing. I guess that shows you how deadly these things are, because it's like, whatever the case may be, whether they were all wiped out or they're on a run or whatever the case may be, it's enough to make a scary organization like Black Badge kind of take a step back, kind of shows you how scary they are. Not unless Black Badge is kind of in a situation of like, as we know, they're kind of assholes and like, oh, let's examine and see how this all goes down. So not unless they're doing that with this too. It's like, oh yeah, leave this to the heir and her friends who all signed that contract. I'd love to see how they handle this situation. So maybe not. I guess we're definitely, I mean, one big thing from this episode, I'm sure we're going to see a lot more of the Order and Wynonna and her friends kind of interacting. I mean, granted, like at the end, he makes it seem like, yeah, you stay with your lane, I'll stay in mine. She's like, yeah, you know, I got friends, so I'm not really going to work with you. He's like, oh, I wasn't saying we should work together, but it seemed like he's interested in her. I don't know whether it's a like situation, like, I kind of like your spunk, or whether it's like, oh, I like your spunk. Like, yeah, you're kind of a badass, okay? Because there's a whole situation where Carla was like, yeah, I don't care if Wynonna is possessed. Don't do this, because, like, you don't know, the Earp can be a very big asset in this battle of yours. It's like, if we have to, we'll kill the Earp. I mean, I ain't got time to waste on, like, you know, this is a long time coming, this whole mission. We've lost people. If we have to sacrifice, they're saying one for the life of the many. You know, that's why they were kind of like, if we have to sacrifice Waverly, then we have to sacrifice Waverly. So I was actually kind of impressed when it came down to it. I was wondering, because I figured Doc wouldn't be the one. Obviously, he noticed the changes in her, Wynonna's behavior and stuff like that. Also, side note, that shake, that like smoothie thing she was making at the beginning of the rat, and they're fucking disgusting. I was just like, ugh. Like, you know, it's still one of those things that kind of gives that, like, I don't have a big gag reflex, but it's like anytime I see that, it just kind of makes you go, ugh, kind of shivers up your spine. And she's wanting Waverly to taste. It's like, oh, come on, I'm not an animal. I put a little salt around the rims and stuff. Like, come on, Waverly, drink up. So, but he kind of saw differences, but he didn't really say anything. And it's like, oh, when he hears like, oh yeah, this is on consecrated ground, kind of makes, you know, those who've done something bad kind of feel nasty. So definitely, I guess at the very least, that means like Mercedes and her sister aren't going to be coming near that place anytime soon. I mean, maybe that'd be kind of the key sign of like, oh yeah, something's not right with them, because that still hasn't been brought to the attention of Wynonna and the others. So, I mean, now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, I mean, they've always kind of been on their own anyway when it comes to stuff within the Ghost Triangle. They kind of always like, we handle this on our own without Black Badge's help. So, I mean, them disappearing doesn't really make much difference. But the fact of the matter is, it still would help to have a big organization kind of giving you supplies and stuff like that. Lucky for Dolls, they've kind of figured out the whole medicine situation. I mean, I'm trying to understand, like, does he no longer need the medicine, or is it because they were able to create it that, you know, they're kind of building up to, like, permanently heal him, or is it, like, because of the stage the medicine's in, it's like, yeah, you're healed, but at least for now, but what's inside you still there, but it won't flare up as often, or is it kind of like, now we're kind of back in that old cycle of season 1 of, like, you need to take your medicine to kind of stay in control, whatever the case may be. I was kind of surprised. I think part of me was expecting that thing to stay inside of Wynonna a lot longer than it did. Just because I felt like, I mean, it's not even her just being the heir. It's just being who Wynonna is. That is staying liked about her. And it's also, it kind of brought up something too about Waverly. It's like, being inside Waverly, there's a lot of dark spots in you. And it's something, you know, Bobo kind of referenced in the first season too, that there's a lot of anger buried deep inside of Waverly. Like I said, like, there is definitely something not natural about Waverly. She might not be an Earp, but she is special, whatever she is, because it's like, she was able to fight a demon's possession. I mean, this thing possessing her for like 7 weeks, kind of putting that time frame there. It's like, holy shit, that's a long ass time to be fighting that. And that's why the demon kind of was like tired of living in Waverly. It's like, you fighting me too much. The whole thing is like, finally found out about the silver and everything. That was to kind of cement its like possession of her body and everything. And I thought it was kind of interesting how it's like, manipulating Nicole, because Nicole's already in a position of not really liking Wynonna anyway, but it's like, she's possessed by a demon. She's trying to hurt you. I'll protect you. I love you. But the moment it's like, shoot her, it's like, no. Waverly would never say that, because obviously she loves Wynonna, so it's like she would never say something like that, you know, because Waverly's not like that at all in general. So she'd be begging you not to shoot her, be like, please don't hurt my sister. So, I mean, that's a question too, because even Wynonna, when she was used Peacemaker on it, she was like, yeah, I hope you don't basically find peace, essentially. It's like, can something like that even find peace? Is it like, make your peace, you know? Is like, can that thing even do that? Or is it like pure evil that the moment it gets shot, it's dead? There's no like revenants going to hell and stuff like that. It seemed like that thing might be dead since there was nothing to kind of come up from the ground. It seems like demons are like that in the series, that they stay dead. So, I mean, because it's interesting because, like, once again, like, comparing Wynonna's, like, fighting against it, she had moments, but Waverly had big lapses between her and the demon. I mean, the thing inside of her, like, well, I mean, kind of, you know, the Munchkin, like, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing the name. I'm just going to refer to it as a passenger, like, because that's what dolls initially referred to it as. But, I mean, because it seems like this is actually possibly connected to their old stuff, too, when it comes to Black Badge, because him and Lucado were talking about, yeah, this was supposed to be dealt with, but the squad that was supposed to deal with it, and, like, we lost contact with them and then everything, so it's like, oh, I thought they wiped out the last of it. Turns out not the case. It did kind of look like a miniature version of the thing that came out the gate that they dealt with at the end of season 1. But the thing is, like, Wynonna was only able to fight it for momentary lapses, but Waverly had big gaps of her being herself. Obviously, she had big gaps in memory too, but obviously there was more time. That's why, like, a lot of people didn't really catch on that Waverly was any different. Like, obviously Nicole kind of caught on to it, but no one else really did because she was Waverly so much of the time. But at those moments, she was still a different Waverly too, but not to the point that you'd be able to know the differences. Like, Wynonna was heavily different when she wasn't. Even when I mean, because that kind of shows you that it was in more control of Wynonna. So that was kind of an interesting thing. So, obviously there was the big bombshell that dropped at the end of the episode. I was so certain, I was like, oh, she's finally going to tell her the truth about it. But it's like, oh, the demon told me something about you. I was like, what is that talking about? It's like, oh yeah, that she wasn't a good fit because she was not a comfortable host. And it's like, oh, Wynonna's pregnant. Immediately my brain goes to, Doc? Is Doc the baby daddy? That's the last person she slept with that I'm aware of. Which is definitely going to be interesting going forward, because I don't know Wynonna's probably going to be in that state of just like, what is she going to do? I mean, not only just being a mom, because she probably was like, I'm not ready to be a mom. Like, who am I to be a mom? That, plus a whole like, Earp curse situation. That's like, I don't want to bring a kid into this whole, like, messed up situation. You know, probably, like, it's definitely going to get her thinking about the future, which I'm sure for Wynonna, it's always been like, she's had her set goals of like, hey, we deal with the Earp curse, that's it. Because I remember she went from one goal to the next, like dealing with the original 7 that attacked them on the homestead, now dealing with Bobo, then dealing with just everything, and now having to get from underneath Black Badge and then going back to like, hey, we're going to take out, you know, finish his Earp curse once and for all. So, but all that on top of the fact of having a kid and bringing a kid into all that is too much. And then also, if Doc is the baby's daddy, like, what does that mean between her and Dolls? Because it's something that the thing inside of her was kind of poking at. It's like, oh yeah, you've never actually got to see these curves yourself, have you? Oh, but you could, like, you know, I could be whatever you want me to be. So I was actually scared for a moment that maybe that thing wasn't lying and that Wynonna would kind of permanently lose a limb, but it was like, nah, it did that just to mess with her, like when Dolls had to cut off one of her fingers to get a sample. So also, what is up with that plate? Obviously, Jeremy ended up examining the plate and ended up seeing the logo that's on the firehouse. That's what kind of led to them and everything, to finding out about the order and everything. But still, it's like, why is that plate so important that they would take that and let Wynonna kind of deal with the whole possessed Waverly situation? That's why I'm kind of curious. Like, it looks like it's just a plate. Obviously, it has some significance because demons and such want it. So there's something to it. Whether it's a hidden secret, maybe it's the key to something, maybe there's some secret power sealed within it. I don't know. I'm definitely interested to see what goes down in the like next episode with all these new developments, you know, no Black Badge and obviously the character development moments themselves. And I'm curious to see where Waverly and Nicole go from here, because obviously there's some stuff that was kind of brought up this episode, like, yeah, the fact of the matter is you're a little too, like the way Wynonna was almost phrasing it, it's like, you're too good, Nicole. Like, the fact of the matter is you have such high standards that you want Waverly to live up to. Obviously that wasn't 100% Wynonna, but even Wynonna later on, it's like, yeah, me and you, we have our issues, like, you're a little too too for me. But the fact of the matter is, you love my sister, and that's all that I care about. The fact is that you love her and she loves you. At the end of the day, that's all that matters. So, I mean, I still think the fact of the matter is that Wynonna still hasn't 100% dealt with the fact of like having killed Willa. Like, it's still a situation where obviously earlier in the season we saw her kind of break down. So it's still there, but I'm sure, like, you know, she kind of has to push it aside. It's like, yeah, I have to deal with my shit some other time. We got other shit to deal with. So figuring out what the hell this whole situation with this cracked ground is. Like, the fact of the matter is, it's like I said, the Order has answers to a lot of that stuff because they're connected to Juan Carlo too. Because it's like, oh yeah, you're an advisor and everything, and we always listen to your words. But Ewan's like, yeah, but the fact of the matter is, they follow my orders. So, like I said, it's going to be interesting seeing whether they really interact at all going forward. I feel like they don't really have much of a choice in the situation, especially if they want things to end very positively, trying to get a handle on everything in the Ghost Triangle. Especially considering the Order seems to know more about this than anyone else. Hopefully we kind of get a little more insight and background into them. And more so about the things that pretend to be Mercedes and her sister and the whole Tucker situation. Like, kind of like it seems like they might be doing the same thing to Tucker that the Demon and Bobo kind of pointed out about Waverly. Like I said, I think there's something there. I think I might have brought this up last episode, but that might be what this whole Waverly situation is about. Maybe in actuality, she's actually a gardener. But, like, whatever the situation is, they want, like, what role Tucker's playing now, like, oh, the darkness in him, maybe that's why they keep referencing the darkness and anger inside of Waverly, because whatever those things are, they need that, because something special about the gardeners, that darkness, that anger inside of them either feeds something, or it allows something to be born or reborn in this world, or created, or something. Like, maybe the plan is to turn Tucker into some demon, or become a vessel for something, and maybe that's what they eventually will plan for Waverly if they find out. Like I said, that's still being a secret kept. I'm sure the whole pregnancy thing, like, Wynonna's going to ask Waverly to keep that, which is like, Waverly's probably going to be like, yeah, that you're my sister, I'm not going to tell your business like that. While Waverly's still got her whole secret about not being an Earp, which she's yet to tell anyone but Nicole, so. And then also Juan Carlo too, like I said, like, as we see, the Order has some kind of connection to Juan Carlo, so we know they know something about him. It's interesting, the only person that hasn't crossed, no, I'm about to say, like, Wynonna's never actually crossed paths with him. It's like, no, so everyone amongst the main group has come cross paths with him. Obviously, Doc last season, Waverly's first time was this episode, Wynonna's was the season finale, and Dolls happened, in between, episodes and stuff like that. He kind of helped Dolls out, which he kind of already said before. He's like, yeah, I only did what I could. I couldn't really help out, which is kind of like the whole, yeah, you can't interfere type of thing. Whatever boundaries are set, he can't help out. So once again, it's like, we are keeping an eye out. I don't think he's talking about the Order. There are some, like, high, powerful people, like, in a power, like, position of, like, they're not necessarily human. They're something else. Keeping an eye out. The fact is, they disappear, like, he constantly disappears like that. Even when he was like, whoa, he just disappeared, and Doc's like, yeah, he does that. So whether or not the Order will say anything about who Juan Carlo is, maybe in actuality they don't even know themselves. It's like, yeah, he's kind of a thing that's been around since the beginning days of the Order, and the Order's always been like, yo, listen to him. Honestly, we really don't know that much about him, so maybe, I don't know, we'll see. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.